Salutations everyone, welcome to another Overwatch video where today we're talking about everyone's favorite pyrotechnic, Mr. Junkrat, a character that really doesn't get any love, never has, he's never been part of the meta, almost nobody ever talks about the guy, and he's actually one of my favorite characters to play. Ever since the beta, I think he was actually my most played character in the beta. And I do very, very well with the character. You don't see Junkrat being picked very often. Like I said, he's never, ever once been part of the meta for, any map on any, attack or defending. For really anything, people are like, oh, his ult isn't very good, and he can't do anything against Pharah, and he'll feed Zarya shields and stuff like that. Like, really the only positive thing you ever heard about Junkrat, in the early onset of the game about a year ago, is that he quote-unquote counters Tracer because, she was the squishiest character in the game. Well, actually, her and Zenyatta were, but, Zenyatta then got the buffs. And, of course, he has shields as well. But, that was also, like, super inaccurate. Like, sure, only a couple of shots and she's dead, and she couldn't, avoid the projectile explosive blast radiuses as she could, hit scan weapons. But still, that was just completely off. There was a lot of, early on misconceptions about what characters are good against what and how they should be utilized, and the word counter was just thrown around a lot incorrectly. So, but we could talk about that for another video. But I want to talk about Junkrat and how good he actually is, because I honestly feel that he is very much underutilized in all levels of matchmaking. Honestly, I know you're never going to see a pro use Junkrat, and he's not going to be great for a ton of situations. His pick rate isn't fantastically high in any level of play. And obviously that pick rate's going to be lower the higher level I think that you go. Or at the very least, you're not going to be able to see him in Grandmasters very often. But, he can trap an angry gorilla like the zoologist that he is, reining everybody in with the traps. Huge burst DPS. Now that he can blow stuff up in your face without taking friendly damage himself, he became a lot more utilizable in, just going up, like getting in a Winston's face and blowing him up and not having to worry about doing damage to yourself. And when that buff came out, a lot of people were like, oh, so we're gonna see more, use out of Junkrat, and like that didn't change him at all. It didn't change how people saw him or how people used him or thought how good that he was in the game. But I'm always perplexed about Junkrat players as a whole, because starting in Season 5, all of a sudden there became this huge outburst throughout, I think, every single level of play of Junkrat mains. And it's not like this was right after the buff, like he'd gotten buffed a long time ago and there was no real change in, the Junkrat game and how you play him. But all of a sudden, Season 5, there was tons of Junkrat mains. Like, every single lobby I got in, there were Junkrat mains. And I saw it in Silver, I saw it in Gold, I saw it in Plat, I saw it everywhere. And, I mean, obviously, I'm not, Masters or Grandmasters or Top 500, so I can't say how that went down. But there was a huge influx of Junkrat-only players, huge influx in Reaper-only players, and that was a terrible thing to have to have on your team. And now he got buffed, and that's, not such a terrible thing, except if you're a bad player, you'll find a way to play poorly no matter how great your character is, whether they got buffed or nerfed or were good or bad to begin with. But what perplexes me is just how bad Junkrat players are. I have never played with even a decent Junkrat, and I've only played against a good Junkrat one time. And that's because the team that I was, the randoms that I was paired up with, they ran Orisa and Reinhardt. And as we know, one of the things that everyone can agree on that Junkrat is good against, and that's destroying barriers. Because he can do so much damage and, doesn't have to, be a McCree, pinpoint accurate Widow cross-map headshot sniper. It's really easy to land, the shots with him, especially on huge targets, and the fact that it doesn't matter at what range you do it. A, he's going to be doing the same damage because it's an explosive projectile, and B, he no longer gets hurt by his own attacks. he can do even more against the barriers in this game. So that's just another thing that, you know, Reinhardt's have been having to deal with this past season that really have slowed him down in his usefulness. And he's also really good at, you know, taking out the Winston bubbles and the Orisa barriers, which we've seen, you know, a ton of play on, you know, even at higher levels on certain defenses just to stall. They'll go Orisa and Torbjorn, or you know, sometimes even Bastion, and we can see that be utilized to great effect if you're, you know, a solo queue matchmaking player like I am. But Junkrat can just do so much. I feel like, kind of like when in my Reaper video, and that was before he got buffed, an unorganized team is really terrible at beating a Reaper, you know, even before he got so damn strong, which that possibly might be reined in sometime soon, is that people don't know how to deal with a Junkrat. A, because he's super uncommon, and B, just the sheer amount of damage that he can do. And it makes me really perplexed about how bad other Junkrat players play, because every single time I play Junkrat, I do very well. Like I said, I don't get to pick him a lot. There's very few instances where I feel like he's very useful. I really like him on Lijiang Tower. Here on the Garden is probably when he's the least useful, you know, it's the most wide open area. But as far as King of the Hill goes, Junkrat can have great effect. Taking out, you know, people trying to hide in a corner with a Reinhardt and maybe a Reaper, or maybe a Bastion or a Torb, or, you know, somebody behind that shield. And Junkrat can just really take it to all of those barriers. And because you're in such a close proximity in King of the Hill, or you know, capture points as a whole, he doesn't have to be super accurate, and he isn't as much of a sitting duck. He can get up in your face, do damage to you, and he's just fine. Set down the traps, and you're going to get a lot of traps because there's only a small playing field that people can be that is, you know, on or near the objective. And obviously, you know, right, a lot of different paths that is going to be common, especially in matchmaking. People aren't going to switch things up very much, and character switching isn't super duper common in matchmaking, because people are like, oh no, my Hanzo is God, and like, oh no, I'm great with Reinhardt, even though I just charge in and die every time. People still don't switch out, and there really isn't a fantastic way to stop Junkrat. Like, there's no hard, you know, strat to go up against him. He's not fantastic against anything, but he's not, I feel like, super weak against anything either. Obviously, he's not going to be able to take down a Pharah, and if you're indoors and in capture points, that's going to be mitigated a bit much. But obviously, Pharahs can still do a ton against him if they know what they're doing, if they're being pocketed in My Mercy, and the rest of the team can focus fire. Junkrat can really be held accountable to the reckless playstyle that a lot of Junkrat players have played into in the past. Another, outside of King of the Hill and Lijiang, and I think Nepal, he's really good with as well, and he can kind of like really fit into any team comp, I feel like. Obviously, you don't want, you know, too many DPSs, which is always going to be a problem in matchmaking, because everyone thinks that their DPS is amazing, and they don't want to play healers or tanks because they aren't interested in winning. They're interested in, you know, being Reaper and just, you know, hitting Y and getting a double kill and hope that gets play of the game. That's really most players' goals for some reason. You know, even at Platinum and Diamond. But that, you know, that's a totally different other issue. But Junkrat, you know, doesn't need a team to play with. He doesn't need a certain setup, and he doesn't struggle a lot. Obviously, defense matrix can eat up a lot, and if, you know, a couple tanks get in his face, he's not going to be able to do a ton. But in close quarters encounters, he's very useful. And outside of control, I've always liked him on Gibraltar. You might have seen me use him on streams and even in some other videos, you know, as early as the beta and as recently as, you know, this past season. I've always liked Junkrat on Gibraltar, not just, you know, but both attack and defense. Obviously, you know, that hill in the early section is definitely very helpful for him, and you have, you know, kind of an open streets phase, and he can be Definitely not one of the safer picks, but like I said, in matchmaking, that's not as big of an issue. And yes, his ult isn't fantastic. It's loud. Everybody sees it coming. You know, obviously you can synergize with, you know, Grav or a Hammer Down or something like that, or, you know, come from an angle that they aren't expecting, or hop through a window, like here in Lijiang Garden. You can ride up on the walls, pop through a window, or at the earlier part at Night Market, you can pop through the windows right there and get some quick kills. And obviously it's not going to be getting triples and quads all the time, but if you can get one high value target, you know, get the Mercy so they can't get the res, or take out the Reinhardt that's, you know, got himself in a corner, or Winston that's got himself bubbled, Tyre can go right through and, you know, take out most characters all by itself, and at the very least do a ton of damage, unless of course it does get destroyed, which, you know, does happen. And I've found times facing Junkrats that I destroy their Tyre time and time again. Obviously that's a much bigger problem for Junkrats if they're like on Route 76, for instance. But if a Junkrat player plays to his strengths, he's not going to be dying a ton. And he's going to be getting a lot of kills because the sheer burst damage that he can apply safely. So it's really weird when I see all these Junkrat mains, which are all over the place, not get kills. You're Junkrat. You're a DPS player. You need to get kills. That's the only way you're going to be able to get value. He can't do any healing. He's not going to be able to take out Pharahs or do anything crazy, get some amazing ult that can change the game. Or, you know, he's not fantastic at peeling off and protecting the back line, but he could get in your face and do as much damage as a Reaper and be just as effective in certain cases. And he doesn't really necessarily need a ton of setup or a certain kind of comp to go up against in order to have success. His mine is great. His trap can really frustrate people and can even stop quite a few very dangerous ults right in their steps. And you can get fantastic spreads like this where I go 53-5. And if you take a look at the averages for this season, that's what, 33 elims on average and averaging 6.5 deaths. 33-6 isn't much to sneeze at. Like I said, he's not great for every single instance, but where he is applicable, he's kind of unstoppable in matchmaking, because people don't understand his value, and there's not a lot people want to try to do to stop them because they just value him so lowly. So don't sleep on him. He'll blow your ass up.